I wasn't supposed to be home that morning. The plan was simple. Leave on Thursday, attend the firm's annual strategy retreat in Denver, spend the weekend talking spreadsheets and growth plans, and fly back Monday night. But the storm hit faster than expected. Flights got grounded left and right. My return was spontaneous, unannounced. The Uber ride from the airport was quiet. Snow fell in heavy flurries, and I watched it smear across the window, my thoughts drifting to Steph. We'd been a little off lately. Not fighting exactly, just drifting. Less laughter, more polite small talk, more distance. Still, I missed her, and I figured this early return was the perfect way to close that gap. Show her I was thinking about her. I even stopped at her favorite cafe downtown, the one with the artisanal stuff and baristas who write poetry on cups, and picked up that peppermint hot chocolate she raved about every December. The kind with the curled chocolate shavings on top. I pulled up to our house just after 8 a.m. The neighborhood was dead quiet, blanketed in white. I stepped out of the car, and immediately, something didn't feel right. There were footprints in the snow leading to our front door. 2 sets, one slightly ahead of the other, and they weren't mine. That detail hit me hard. There hadn't been any snowfall since about 4 in the morning, according to the news alerts. These prints were fresh, crisp edges, not dusted over or blown in. Whoever they belonged to had walked in sometime after the snow stopped and before I got home. I stood there for a moment, staring at the tracks. One pair was smaller, probably Steph's. The other looked like a man's. Heavier gait, wider stride. I followed them with my eyes, step by step, all the way to the front door. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe her brother, Kyle, he was always popping in unannounced. Maybe someone dropped off a package. But deep down I felt it. That quiet, low drumbeat of dread in your chest. That gut instinct that says, this is bad, even when your brain's still trying to play defense. I climbed the stairs, my boots crunching softly, and unlocked the door. Inside, everything was dim. The curtains were drawn even though Steph always opened them first thing in the morning to let the light in. The air was warm but stuffy, and smelled faintly of something herbal, her usual eucalyptus body wash. But underneath it was something else. Cologne? Musk? It wasn't mine, and it didn't belong in our house. I closed the door quietly behind me. The place was mostly tidy at first glance. Shoes lined up by the bench, coats on the hooks. But when I walked toward the living room, I noticed something. A coat. A man's coat. Hanging alone on the middle hook like it belonged. Dark wool, expensive looking. Big in the shoulders with a suede-lined collar. I'd never seen it before. Definitely not mine. Steph never kept random outerwear in the house. She hated clutter. Even her brother's stuff went into the hall closet. This coat? It had been hung with care. With familiarity. I called out her name softly, Steph, but got no answer. My feet carried me toward the bedroom before I could really decide what I was doing. Half of me still wanted to believe this was nothing, but the other half was moving with that sick kind of curiosity. The kind that already knows the truth but needs to see it anyway. The bedroom door was ajar. The bed was made on her side. Perfectly, like it hadn't been slept in. My side? Sheets tossed. Pillow barely hanging on. The throw blanket on the floor like someone had kicked it off in a rush. I stepped in further. That's when I saw it. A belt. Brown leather, silver buckle. Lying on the carpet near the foot of the bed. It wasn't mine. I stood there, just staring at it. My brain short-circuited for a moment, trying to think of a way this made sense. Why would Steph's colleague, if that's what this was, take off his belt in our bedroom? And then, from down the hall, I heard the shower running. The sound was like a slap. Everything else in the house fell away. I was suddenly hyper-aware of every detail. The scent in the air, the silence between water splashes, the way the steam curled just slightly around the edge of the bathroom door. I didn't move. Couldn't. My hands were still clutching the hot chocolate tray, now lukewarm, my breath coming in shallow drags. The door to the bathroom opened. Steph stepped out in nothing but a towel, hair wet and skin pink from the heat. Her eyes landed on me like I was a ghost. "Josh," she said, blinking. No gasp. No panic. Just surprise, measured, too calm. What are you doing here? I held up the hot chocolate like an idiot, my hand trembling. My flight got canceled. Snowstorm grounded it. She didn't respond right away. Her gaze flicked past me, toward the bedroom and then back. Wow, you didn't text. I didn't hear you come in. There was a pause that lasted too long, and then she added, Ryan crashed here last night. I didn't say anything. Just stood there. After the office holiday party, she went on like she'd rehearsed it. He had too much to drink and I didn't want him driving. He was gonna call an Uber but ended up just crashing on the couch. I looked toward the living room. The couch cushions were perfectly fluffed. No sign of use. He's already gone, she said quickly. Left super early for work. I nodded slowly. My throat was dry. Steph took a step forward. I know this looks bad. But seriously, it wasn't like that. The words came too fast. Too smooth. She had a whole narrative ready before I even asked a question. Details about the party, about how drunk he got, about how she didn't even sleep well with someone else in the house. But the belt was still in the bedroom. And the coat? Still hanging by the door. And the shower? Had still been running. Who takes a shower at 8 a.m. in someone else's house when they're supposedly already gone? I asked one question. Why is his coat still here? She blinked. Hesitated. I forgot to give it to him. He ran out fast. I think he said he had a meeting. I didn't believe her. I think she knew that. But I didn't push it, not yet. Instead, I looked at the hot chocolate in my hand. Lukewarm now. Peppermint curls melting into the whipped cream. A small, stupid symbol of everything I'd been trying to hold together. Do you want this? I asked, and even I could hear the hollowness in my voice. Steph gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sure. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. Steph lay beside me like nothing had happened, breathing soft and steady, turned away like always. Her side of the bed remained untouched, neat as a hotel sheet. I stared at the ceiling in silence, the faint ticking of the clock louder than it should have been. My mind wouldn't shut off. The hot chocolate cup sat untouched on the kitchen counter. The coat? Still on the hook. I didn't ask about it again. I didn't have to. I kept rewinding everything, playing the scene over and over in my head. The two sets of footprints in the snow. The belt on the floor. The running shower. Steph's calm voice, her detailed answers, the way she didn't flinch when I walked in like she'd already rehearsed the whole thing in her head. Because maybe she had. I didn't accuse her, not directly. I just smiled, nodded, let her talk. But my silence wasn't peace. It was a pressure cooker. I could feel it inside me, hissing, building, waiting to burst. And once I started noticing things, I couldn't stop. That night was just the final straw. But the pattern? It had started weeks ago. Maybe months. I remember the first time I really felt it, this weird, hollow sense of being on the outside of my own relationship. Steph started working late more often. Not just staying at the office, but staying overnight. Client emergencies, she said. End of quarter deadlines. I believed her at first. I really did. I even admired her hustle. But then her stories started to change. She once told me she was flying to Chicago for a real estate expo. 2 days later, I saw an Instagram photo she'd been tagged in. Nothing suspicious, just her, dressed up, wine glass in hand, at what looked like a rooftop party in the city. But the caption didn't match. It said, Madison nights never disappoint. Madison, not Chicago. I asked her about it and she laughed. Oh yeah, they moved the expo last minute. Total chaos? I forgot to mention. She said it like it was nothing. Like I was being dramatic for even asking. Then there was the perfume. Steph always wore the same scent. Clean, floral, subtle. But one night she came home smelling like something completely different. Deeper, muskier. When I asked about it, she brushed it off with a laugh. I ran out of mine, she said. Used one of the free samples at the office. It's too strong, right? I told myself she was probably telling the truth. It wasn't like I had proof. But it lingered. So did the late-night texts. She kept her phone face down all the time, which wasn't unusual in itself. She said it helped her focus. But when a message popped up one evening while she was in the shower, I saw it. Just one line from someone named R. It read, still thinking about last night's smirking face. I stared at the screen until it disappeared. The preview faded away and all I was left with was the pounding in my chest. I didn't say anything when she came out. I couldn't. My mouth was dry, my voice useless. The next day, the message was gone. I searched her phone when she was in the shower. Yes, I did. I hated myself for it, but I did. No trace. No thread. Nothing under R, nothing in her recently deleted. like it never happened. But I knew what I saw. After that, things got colder. Subtle but noticeable. She stopped reaching for my hand when we walked. Stopped texting during the day unless I reached out first. She still smiled when I came home, still kissed me goodnight, but it all felt off, mechanical, like she was running a script. I started pulling away without meaning to. I stopped asking about her day, stopped suggesting date nights. I told myself we were just busy, that all marriages hit rough patches, that maybe I was the problem, that maybe I was being insecure, needy, dramatic. But now, after walking into that house, seeing those footprints, the belt, the coat, the shower, I realized none of those earlier moments were isolated. They were chapters in a book I didn't want to read, and the story was already halfway done. I sat in the car the next morning before work, engine running, heat blasting, coffee untouched in the cup holder. I watched the condensation gather at the edges of the windshield as I tried to gather myself. The street was quiet. Our front door closed behind me like the end of a scene. I gripped the steering wheel and stared ahead, not really seeing the road. That's when I remembered the Christmas party. A month earlier, Steph had begged off attending my office party. She said she had a work dinner with a potential client, some real estate investor flying in from Austin. Big opportunity, she'd said. If I can land this, it could be huge for us. I went solo, smiled through the evening, told my coworkers she was closing a big deal. Everyone nodded, impressed. But that night, around 10:30, I got a text from one of her friends, Marla. It was a blurry photo, looked like a bar. Steph was in the background, laughing, arm around some guy in a tight gray blazer, not someone I recognized. Marla didn't say anything. She just sent the photo with no caption, like she didn't want to get involved but couldn't keep it to herself either. When I showed Steph the picture the next day, she looked surprised for a half second, then laughed. Oh my God, that was from like 2 weeks ago. Marla's such a troll. She must have been clearing out her phone and found that old pic. She said it with a smile, brushing it off so fast it almost worked. But I knew. The timestamp was from the night of the party. I didn't push it. I didn't want to be that guy, the controlling, paranoid husband. I told myself trust mattered more than any blurry photo. Now I realize what I was really doing was bargaining with reality. Every lie she told came dressed up in just enough logic to sound reasonable. And I wanted so badly for it to be true. I wanted my wife back. I wanted the version of us we used to be. I wanted the old Steph, the one who used to surprise me with lunch at work, the one who'd climb into my lap on Sunday mornings just to steal my coffee and giggle. But that Steph was slipping further away every day. And somewhere inside, I knew she wasn't coming back. That morning, as I sat there in the car, something cracked open in me. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was ashamed, embarrassed. I had become the guy who noticed all the signs but still smiled through them. Still bought her hot chocolate. Still believed the lie because it was easier than accepting the truth. The truth being, she had already left me emotionally. I was just the last one to find out. And if there was any doubt left, any sliver of uncertainty, it disappeared when I remembered something from 2 weekends ago. She told me she was going on a yoga retreat with a few girls from her gym. She even packed a mat, essential oils, the whole deal. I had stayed behind, caught up on errands, binged a show, ordered pizza. She texted me pictures of a sunrise, said it was so peaceful out here. But one of the pictures had a reflection. A window, a glass door maybe. In the reflection was a man's silhouette, holding a phone. She never mentioned him. I told myself it could have been anyone. Passerby, a staff member, maybe just bad luck with the angle. But now I saw it for what it was. Another missed warning. Another lie dressed as truth. The pattern was all there, and I was done pretending not to see it. By the third night, I stopped pretending I could sleep. The weight of it all had shifted. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was something harder, heavier, like holding a soaked rope that used to tie your life together. Only now it was fraying in your hands, strand by strand. All I could do was watch it unravel. Steph had gone to bed early that night, claimed she had a migraine and needed to rest. She was wearing one of my old college hoodies, as if draping herself in nostalgia might earn back a shred of goodwill. I watched her curl up under the comforter like nothing was wrong, like I wasn't lying next to a stranger. I waited until her breathing steadied deep, even. Then I slipped out of bed and walked to the living room. Her work tablet was on the couch, still charging. First, I didn't move. I just stood there in the dark, staring at it like it was a bomb. I didn't want to be that guy. The one who digs through his partner's stuff looking for some kind of smoking G*N. The guy who needs proof to validate the pain he already feels. But I also knew I couldn't live in that in-between space anymore, between suspicion and truth, between trust and denial. I needed something final. Not to scream or throw or accuse. Just something to close the door. I sat down slowly and picked up the tablet. No password. The screen lit up and I swiped through a few folders, work files, PDFs, presentations. Everything looked normal. Too normal. And then I saw a folder buried in her Google Drive, titled Q4 Project Notes. Sounded boring enough. I opened it. Inside were a series of files with vague names: Layout 1, Client Summary, Sketch_Jan. I almost gave up until I opened one labeled Ref_Drafts. It was filled with *TS. I didn't know what I expected, maybe some work images or mock-ups, but what I saw knocked the breath out of me. Messages. Dozens of them. Conversations between Steph and someone named Ryan. Not work-related. Not even close. The first one I clicked on was dated about 6 weeks back. Ryan, that pic you send is going to haunt me all day. Steph, then I did my job winking face. I sat there, fingers frozen, as I scrolled through more. Ryan, wish I could wake up next to you every morning. Steph, let's make that happen sooner than later. My chest tightened, but I kept going. Some of the *TS had photos attached. One in particular hit harder than the rest, an image of 2 pairs of legs tangled in bedsheets. My bedsheets. The gray and white striped set I bought on our anniversary trip to Seattle. The comforter I'd picked because she said it felt like a hotel. The timestamp on the photo? It matched the weekend she was at the yoga retreat. I just stared at it, my eyes tracing every thread, every shadow. It wasn't even about the picture, it was what it meant. That this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was regular. Comfortable. It had roots. They didn't just sleep together. They made memories together. There was another message sent the morning after that weekend. Ryan, still smells like you in here. Might just skip work and stay in bed. And Steph's reply. You're such a bad influence. I love it. Save me a pillow. I felt sick. It wasn't just the infidelity, it was the tone. The warmth in her words. The joy. That lightness used to belong to me. She used to text me like that. I set the tablet down and leaned back into the couch, trying to slow my breathing. I couldn't. My thoughts were a mess, crashing into each other, echoing louder every second. She hadn't just cheated. She'd built a second life. Carefully. Secretly. I got up and walked to the kitchen, flicked on the light. On the fridge was a magnet we bought during our trip to Nashville. A photo booth strip of us stuck beneath it, us laughing, holding iced coffees, mid-blink. A memory that once meant something. Now it just felt like a prop in a set I didn't realize was staged. The walls of our house felt closer than ever, like they were trying to press in on me, squeeze me out. I wasn't angry, not in the explosive, scream until your voice breaks kind of way. I was something worse. I was numb. I went back to the couch. Opened the folder again. More messages. One from just 3 days ago. Ryan, miss you already. Next time, don't sneak out so early, winking face. Steph, I'll try, but you know me, ninja mode before sunrise, grinning face was wet. I closed the tablet. That was it. I didn't need to hear another word. I didn't need a confession. The truth was written in emojis and timestamps and tangled legs on my own damn sheets. I sat there for hours, watching the sky lighten outside. The snow still blanketed the lawn. The footprints had disappeared overnight, softened by fresh snowfall. Like the evidence of it all could just be erased. But not this. Not what I saw. Not what I knew now. Steph walked into the kitchen just after 7, wrapped in a robe, hair tied back. She rubbed her eyes like she hadn't destroyed our marriage 3 times over. Morning, she said softly, like everything was normal. I didn't answer. She tilted her head. Did you sleep? I looked at her, really looked. And I saw it then. Not guilt. Not panic. Resignation. She knew. And maybe, in some twisted way, she was relieved. Like she didn't have to keep performing anymore. I turned back toward the window. She walked over to the coffee machine and started brewing like we were just another couple starting another ordinary day. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. She poured her mug, added a splash of almond milk, stirred, routine motions as if muscle memory could carry her through the discomfort. She stood behind me for a beat, probably waiting for me to turn, to speak, to ask. I didn't. Josh, she started. I stood up. Don't, I said. Not sharp. Not loud. Just final. I walked past her without another word, back to the bedroom. She didn't follow. By 9 o'clock, I'd packed a bag. Just enough for a week. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I left the tablet on the coffee table, the messages still open. I left my house key on the counter next to her half-drunk coffee. And then I walked out the front door. The snow was untouched now. Mine were the first fresh prints of the day. The last thing I saw before closing the door behind me was that stupid photo booth strip still stuck on the fridge with that Nashville magnet. Her smile frozen mid-laugh. I didn't take it down. Let her look at it. Let her remember what she lost. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not my parents. Not my coworkers. Not even Kyle, who always told me I could crash at his place if life ever blew up. I just left. Steph texted about an hour after I walked out. The notification popped up on my dash while I was halfway out of the city, the buildings thinning into frozen farmland, the snow starting to pile along the shoulder of the road. Please come back. Let's talk. I can explain. I didn't respond. Because there was nothing to explain anymore. Explanation is what you give when someone walks into a misunderstanding. This was the kind of truth that didn't need words. I saw what I saw. I read what I read. I didn't need a voiceover. I kept driving. I didn't know where I was going when I started. I just knew I needed to be far from the house. Far from that shower. That belt. That coat. Far from the couch where I'd held Steph during so many quiet nights, not knowing she'd eventually bury a dagger between my ribs and tell me it was an accident. Somewhere around Eau Claire, I stopped for gas. The pump handle was so cold it burned. I stood there, staring at my reflection in the side mirror, beard a little overgrown, eyes sunken, hat pulled too low. I looked like a guy on the run. Maybe I was. The car smelled like peppermint from the hot chocolate cup that was still in the back seat. The whipped cream had caved in days ago, hardened into a sugary crust. I should have thrown it out, but I didn't. It sat there like a sad little monument to everything I used to believe in. The road stretched on. Eventually, sometime around dusk, I saw a sign off the highway, volunteers needed, Cold Pines Horse Ranch. There was a little arrow pointing down a snowy access road. I don't know what pulled me in. Maybe it was the idea of silence. Or hard work. Or just a place that didn't have her name on anything. I took the turn. It was exactly what it sounded like, a quiet little horse ranch in the middle of nowhere. Wooden fencing. A couple barns. An old ranch house with smoke rising from the chimney. A black dog with one white paw met me in the driveway, wagging its tail like I was expected. A guy in a thick flannel and a stocking cap came out of the barn, wiping his hands on his jeans. You lost? He asked. Looking for work, I replied. Or just a place to stay a while. He studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. We got a spare cot in the loft. No pay, but 3 hot meals and more chores than you can imagine. Sounds like heaven. That night, I slept in the loft above the stables, wrapped in an old sleeping bag that smelled like cedar and hay. It was cold, no central heat, just a small electric heater humming by my boots, but for the first time in weeks, I slept. Really slept. No tossing. No ghosts in the hallways of my head. Just darkness. Quiet. Stillness. The days that followed were simple. I fed the horses, cleaned out stalls, shoveled snow off the roof. My hands blistered. My back ached. But it felt good. Clean. Pain that made sense. No one asked me why I was there. No one pried. They just handed me a shovel and a thermos of coffee and pointed me toward whatever needed doing. I didn't think about Steph much, not at first. I didn't let myself. I didn't check my phone except once a day, and even then only long enough to see the same message from her repeated over and over. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. I know you're hurting. Can we fix this? Josh, I miss you. I didn't block her. I didn't respond either. I think some part of me wanted her to sit in that silence. To know what it felt like to be unanswered. Unheard. Forgotten. I spent my mornings brushing horses and my nights reading whatever books I found lying around in the barn's break room, old Louis L'Amour paperbacks and water-stained field guides. I didn't want screens. I didn't want anything that could flicker and glow and remind me of all the texts and photos and lies that had lit up my life in the worst way. One night, a weekend, the ranch owner, his name was Dale, sat beside me in the barn office, sipping something strong from a chipped blue mug. He hadn't asked about my past before, but that night, he finally did. You runnin' from something? He asked, as not leaving the fire. Yeah, I said. A marriage. Or the idea of one, anyway. He didn't nod. Didn't look surprised. Just sipped again and said, lot of ghosts out there, friend. But they follow slower in the snow. That line stuck with me. Ghosts follow slower in the snow. The next morning, I left my wedding ring in the drawer of the nightstand in the loft. Just tucked it away beside a forgotten pocket knife and a black-and-white photo of a horse named Whiskey. It didn't feel ceremonial. It didn't feel triumphant. It just felt necessary. Like finally putting down a bag you didn't know was crushing your spine. The peace didn't come all at once. It came in fragments. In the sound of hooves crunching snow. In the whistle of wind against the barn siding. In the simple rhythm of work that didn't lie or hide or betray. A post needed mending. A trough needed filling. And none of it came with a fake smile or a rehearsed excuse. Steph kept texting, though less often. Once she sent a photo. Us on our wedding day. Me in a navy suit. Her in that simple silk dress she swore she wouldn't cry in, but did anyway. I stared at it for a long time. Then deleted it. I didn't want her ghosts anymore. She wasn't just someone who made a mistake. That word, mistake, implies a stumble, a moment. What she did was deliberate. Maintained. Protected. She watered it like a plant and watched it grow, all while lying next to me each night with the same lips that whispered, I love you. I realized something else too. I didn't leave out of rage. That would have been easier. A dramatic exit. Broken dishes. Shouting matches. No, this was different. I left because I felt something shift inside me. A final click in a lock. Not because I didn't love her anymore, but because I couldn't love someone who wasn't real. The woman I loved? She existed once. But she wasn't in that house anymore. She hadn't been for a long time. I stayed on at the ranch longer than I thought I would. Weeks passed. Snow deepened. Christmas came and went. No decorations. No gifts. Just another day. And honestly, it was fine. I watched the stars at night. Made fresh tracks every morning. Rebuilt things with my hands. I was still hurt. Still healing. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the next lie. And in that quiet, I realized something simple but sharp. I was free. It was a Tuesday when she found me. I just finished mucking out the east stalls, my gloves stiff with dried mud, when Dale walked into the barn holding a manila envelope and a curious expression. He didn't say anything, just handed it to me like he was passing off a sack of feed. No return address, he said. But it's for you. The handwriting was unmistakable. I didn't need to turn it over to know who it was from. Steph had the soft, slanted way of writing lowercase a's, like a kid who never quite shook cursive from Catholic school. I waited until I was alone before I opened it. She didn't text. She didn't call. She didn't show up crying on the porch with mascara running down her face and shaking hands begging for mercy. No dramatic scene. No emotional monologue. Just paper. And ink. Inside was a single, folded letter. Not even in an envelope, just raw, like she couldn't bring herself to seal it. Like she wanted it to breathe. I sat down on the wooden bench beside the feed bin, exhaled once, and started reading. Josh? I know this letter is probably the last thing you want to see. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't finish it or if you burned it before the first line. But I needed to try. I needed to put this down somewhere that couldn't be deleted or left on read. Somewhere that felt more human than a screen. I know you know everything now. I saw the way you looked at me before you left. You didn't say a word, but I felt it. You were done. Not angry. Not explosive. Just done. I want to start by saying I'm sorry, but even that feels so thin and useless now. Like a band-aid tossed at a broken bone. I cheated. I lied. I let something rot between us and pretended I didn't smell it. Ryan was a mistake. But not the kind of mistake people talk about when they want to feel better about themselves. Not a drunken one-time thing or a spur-of-the-moment slip. It was slow. Gradual. Like turning the temperature up on a pot until something boils over and you act shocked that it spilled. It started with messages. Flirty jokes. Compliments I hadn't heard in a while. Not because you stopped giving them, but because I stopped hearing them. I didn't even mean to go further, but then I did. And then again. And again. Until it wasn't a mistake anymore, it was a habit. When I told myself it was harmless, that was the moment I crossed the first real line. You always made me feel safe, Josh. Maybe too safe. Like I could never fall. And I think part of me, this dark, selfish part, resented that. I wanted danger. Mystery. Something messy. And instead of talking to you, I ran toward someone who offered it like a dare. Ryan wasn't even good to me, not really. He walked away the second things turned real. The second I mentioned wanting more than hotel rooms and midnight exits. He said I was never supposed to take it seriously, that I was fun, temporary, a secret he liked, not a person he loved. I haven't heard from him in 2 weeks. He won't even answer my calls. I deserve that. What I don't deserve, what I know I can't ask for, is your forgiveness. But I still want to tell you this. I remember us. I remember the good things. I remember the first time you took me hiking and I sprained my ankle 10 minutes in, and you carried me all the way back down, drenched in sweat, swearing the whole time that it was just a great workout. I remember you dancing like a lunatic in the kitchen when we made pancakes too late at night. I remember how you held me when my mom got sick, and how you never made me feel weak for crying into your chest until I couldn't breathe. You were good to me, Josh, better than I deserved, and somehow that scared me. I think, deep down, I didn't know how to be loved without breaking something. Like it wouldn't count unless there was some blood in it. Maybe I needed the consequences to feel like I was alive. Now I just feel empty. The house is quiet. Your side of the bed is still untouched. I haven't taken down your jacket from the coat rack or moved your shoes from the entryway. I don't know why. Maybe part of me hopes you'll walk through the door again and say this was all a nightmare I dreamed up. Maybe I just can't admit that I'm the one who ruined everything. I'm not asking you to come back. I know better than that. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I'm sorry. Truly, hopelessly sorry. Steph. I read the letter twice, then a third time, not because I was moved or shaken or tempted to forgive her. I read it again because I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something. Some hidden truth. Some kernel of clarity. But there wasn't one. It was all exactly what it looked like. A woman who'd finally realized the fire she set was never going to warm her. I folded the letter and tucked it into the pocket of my coat, unsure why I didn't just tear it up then and there. Maybe I needed to hold the last piece of her story before I let it drift away entirely. Steph hadn't cried. That was what struck me most. No smudged ink. No apology drenched in emotion. Just confession. Clean. Flat. Like a resignation letter from someone who knew they weren't getting their job back. There was something final about that. I walked the perimeter of the ranch that evening, snow crunching under my boots. The sky flushed orange as the sun sank below the pine line. The cold stung my face, but I welcomed it. It reminded me I was still here, still standing. I didn't cry either. Not because I wasn't hurt, but because I'd already cried too much. Grief has an expiration date when it's been poured out in silence for long enough. Steph's words didn't change anything. They didn't soften the truth. But they did something else. Something I didn't expect. They made her real again. Not the version I loved. Not the version who betrayed me. Just a flawed human being fumbling her way through a mess she made with both hands. And for the first time since I left, I didn't feel rage toward her. I felt distance. And that, oddly enough, felt like peace. It was weeks later when I got the message. A woman named Laurel reached out. She was Ryan's ex-wife. Said she thought I deserved to know what Steph had told people about me. That I was controlling, cold, probably cheating too. I felt my stomach drop. So Steph didn't just cheat. She rewrote our history. She turned me into the villain in her version of the story. Not to apologize. To protect herself. To justify the betrayal. I didn't even feel pain this time. Just clarity. She wasn't reckless, she was deliberate. That night, I deleted everything. Every photo, every text, every memory backed up to the cloud. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because peace doesn't live in the past. It lives in letting go. The divorce took less than 30 minutes. She didn't even show, signed everything digitally. I walked out of that courthouse lighter. No final plea. No big moment. Just the quiet end of something that used to be everything. I moved into a smaller place across town. One box of shared memories went into the closet, labeled archived. I didn't open it. Didn't need to. My phone stayed silent. No texts. No noise. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't ache. It healed. Steph became a chapter. Loud, messy, full of lessons. I stopped waiting for closure. I gave it to myself. And that was the beginning of everything new.